Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We've got a busy agenda tonight, so I'd like to get started right away. In fact, we've had a lot of questions emailed in advance, and I know you will have questions coming in during the session. So we're going to try to get through as much as we can in 1 hour. We may be able to go on a bit longer than 1 hour if there are still questions coming in. My name's Tom Fuller, and I work for AUPE as a lead researcher. In the past, I sat on the board of the Public Service Pension Plan, and last year, I was the union co-chair of the Local Authorities Pension Plan Ad Hoc Committee on Sustainability. I'll be moderating the discussion tonight. Let me give you a sense of how we're going to work this. First, we'll be hearing briefly from your president, Guy Smith. Guy can give us political context of the pension proposals and explain some of the measures that AUPE is taking to fight back, and also what we hope you will do in this campaign. After Guy, we will hear from AUPE Pension Representative Larry Murray, who will explain the changes the government is bringing forward and proposing for the plans. Larry previously served as the AUPE representative on the LAP board and is currently the vice chair of the Public Service Pension Plan PSPP board. He has 35 years of experience with pension plans. Please hang on to your questions until Guy and Larry have finished their introduction. And with that, I will turn it over to Guy and Larry.
Thank you, sisters and brothers. This is a new approach for AUPE to reach out to its members, and I appreciate the fact you've joined us tonight. This is obviously an issue that affects so many of our members, fundamental issues of income security upon retirement that are being affected by the proposed changes from the finance minister. And I just want to outline the fact that we've come to the conclusion that because the plans are sustainable, they're strong, they're vibrant, and they do provide that income security when you retire, that these moves are political on behalf of the government. They're not based on the fact that the plans are in crisis or anything like that, and I know Larry will go more into that. But you need to know that these plans are solid, and there's something our members do rely upon. And then when we heard the proposed changes from the finance minister, the first thing we did was connect with as many of our members as possible. We have about 70,000 AUPE members under the LAPP and PSPP. So I sent a letter to all of our affected members just outlining some of the concerns we have about the proposals. And we also work with other unions under the LAPP in a coalition to make it be very clear to the government that this isn't just affecting AUPE members. There's many other workers in other unions involved as well. We've made many public statements through the media, and we are at the moment preparing a formal response that will be presented to the finance minister in terms of these proposals and our position on it, that these proposed changes aren't necessary. We are also in the process of developing legal challenges using an expert team of lawyers. But more importantly, I think we've really engaged our members. We put forward an emergency resolution to our convention just over a month ago. And since that time, we've been on the road meeting with our members at 50 separate town hall meetings from one end of the province to the other. We've had superb turnout, and I really appreciate the fact that our members are interested in this issue and want to get involved in this issue. And one of the first things we've asked you to do is go onto the AUPE website and click on the Hands Off My Pension button at the top of the screen to send a letter directly to your MLA, to the finance minister, and to Premier Redford to let them know how you feel about their proposed changes and how it affects you and your family and your community. We've encouraged you to not just send the electronic form letter, but also add your own comments, your own thoughts, how it affects you personally, because those are the kind of words that will have true resonance when they're read by an MLA. What we've also done in our town hall meetings across the province is encouraged our members to agree to meeting directly, face-to-face with their MLA. Your MLA needs to see the face of the people that these proposed changes are going to impact, and that being you and your families. So we've had a huge take-up on that. We're organizing, arranging meetings with MLAs from one end of the province to the other, hopefully between the period of December 6th to the December 20th, but we also know that those meetings will be organized for the new year as well. So those of you that were unable to attend our in-person town halls and are joining us for the first time tonight, and weren't able to write down the fact that you wanted to meet with your MLA, I want you to email organize@aupe.org. So that's ORGANIZE at AUPE.org. And let them know in your email that you are willing to meet with your MLA as well, and we'll put you in with the list of other sisters and brothers that want to do the same. So regardless of who your MLA is, whether it's a government MLA or an opposition MLA, you need to meet with them and let them know the impacts of these proposed changes. I have to tell you that we are getting very good feedback from the opposition MLAs. They're indicating they're on side with us in this fight. So the most important meetings will be with the government MLAs, obviously, because we need to convince them that if they go ahead with these proposals and they support these proposals, that there will be a political price to pay. We will not forget, come the next election, if they force through these proposals that hurt our members and their families. So please, sign up, meet your MLA. We'll give you all the support you need, the talking points you need, because we do believe, because this is a political issue and it's being done for political reasons, that the best way to fight it is at the political level, and that's by convincing MLAs to actually not support their government's own proposals. So with that, I will turn it over to Larry, who will go over with you some of the framework of the proposed changes that the Minister of Finance announced a couple of months ago.
Thank you, Guy. I'm going to go over the four main proposals that the Minister's vision has brought out. The first item was the elimination of the 85 factor. What that provided our members is you could retire after you've achieved 85 points with an unreduced pension. There was no early retirement penalty. Removal of the 85 factor means that there will be an early retirement penalty for your benefits earned from January 2016 on. The second step was the revision to the current early retirement penalty. At the moment, it's 3%. So if you're retired at 55 with 85 points, you would have no reduction. If you had if you did not have the 85 factor, you would lose 3% of your benefit for each year that you were either before 85 points or age 65. Eliminating the 85 factor and increasing the penalties will be between 4.5% and 6%. That means if you retire at age 55, your benefit will be reduced by between 45 and 60%. So that's a life-changing change, if you will. The next level is the cost of living adjustments. Under the Public Service and Local Authorities Pension Plan, at moment you get 60% of the Alberta cost of living index change from year over year. They want to move that to a 50% target cost of living adjustment. That would mean in years where the fund didn't perform or the plan was under 100% funded, you may not get any cost of living adjustment at all. It might not seem much at a 2.5% inflation rate year by year, but after 5 years, that's a 13% loss of purchasing power at a time in your life where you cannot make up that difference. The final one, and I believe the harshest one, is the government of Alberta wants to put a contribution cap on both of these pension plans. In doing that, there's a fundamental shift from the plan being a defined benefit, where your benefit is defined, to what we would call a target benefit. And what that means is if you have a benefit earned to that particular date, and the fund hasn't done well, or if it's underfunded, as we're facing these years, your benefit will be reduced. This is not only for active members, this would include pensioners, those that are least able to manage this type of a loss. Thank you.
So some ground rules before we get into the questions tonight. Can you ask about your individual plan? Yes, we'll do our best to make sure you understand how this affects you, but we can't give you a precise calculation, and we can only answer based on what we know about what the government has proposed. Secondly, let's try to be as brief as possible with the questions, and we will try to be as brief and concise as we can with our answers. And if we can't answer your question tonight, watch the AUPE website. We will be posting an FAQ document on there. So maybe we should dive right in. Mark, can I get the first question? Brian says, if on January 1st, 2016, I already have 36 years service and have surpassed my 85 factor, will I incur any type of pension reduction should I stay working longer? Well, first, let me say that if you have 36 years in, my congratulations to you. I'll take the easy part of this answer. The easy part is no. Your pension benefit should suffer no reduction whatsoever. And if you still have the interest and enjoy your job, you should continue working longer. Because, as the government says over and over again, the changes to plan benefits only apply to benefits accrued after January 1st, 2016. But it's not quite that simple. Larry has raised the question of risk a few minutes ago, and I'll toss that over to him, I think.
The effects of the 85 factor will stay with your benefit that you've earned till December 31st, 2015. Where you may face an issue is on the contribution cap. As everyone's experienced in the past few years, contribution rates have gone up. And that was to make up shortfalls that have been experienced and to fund them. In the way the government is proposing to put a cap on contributions, if we're not able to raise contribution rates, then benefits will have to be reduced. And that will apply to benefits before and after 2015. So you will be affected.
Next question. Shanaz from Edmonton says, should we even think of transferring our pension into an RRSP before we are at risk? Larry.
I do get this question a lot. There's a lot of issues to make that decision. The first hurdle is you have to leave your employment. You have to terminate. That's the first risk. The bigger risk is if you take a value, a commuted value out of the pension plan, under the Income Tax Act, there's a maximum transfer value. Anything above that threshold is going to be taxed as income to you in the year it's paid. The second level of issues you have is you're going to have to take on the ownership of all the risk, including the investment management fees. In the public service pension plan and local authorities pension plan, we're looking at about 1/2 of 1% to manage the funds. If you go into an RRSP, you're going to pay 4 times that amount. On average, it's 2 to above 3%. So you're going to have to make up the inflation rate plus the management fees before you earn a dime. So I would prefer you wait and not react at this point in time.
Next question. Laurie from Ontario, Alberta, was in a position with Alberta Treasury Branches, Local 20, had her job position abolished in September 2012. Based on the info she had then, she opted for a severance package according to the collective agreement. What impact will a Conservative government's plans have for her pension, which is due to start being paid in September 2016? Larry?
Okay. You're going to face the same issue as the gentleman I just answered the question to. Your benefit is earned prior to 2016, so it'll be provided under the existing provisions, 85 factor and the 3% early retirement penalty. You're still going to be at risk due to the contribution cap. That affects everyone. If we cannot fund the shortfalls, then the only option left is to reduce benefits. And that would apply to you.
So what you're saying, Larry, because I've heard this too in many meetings, is there's no guarantees in the future. And this flies in the face, I think, of what the government is saying in terms of anybody who earned, a pension earned before 2015 is safe, it's locked in. But actually that's not correct because of this whole issue about the cap on contributions.
Right.
The fact that once you cap contributions, the only thing that can change is benefits themselves. So I think this is the main key, this is the sort of the key question that many of our members are starting to understand, and it's one of those key questions that the government is avoiding actually being honest about.
Yes, if you read the vision statement the government put out on September 16th, not only will they put a cap on contribution levels, but they'll also be in a position to alter that cap at any time in the future as they deem appropriate, if you will.
Okay.
I wonder at this point if we could ask the online operator to bring in some of the people who are phoning in for their questions. Do we have a person with a question phoning in?
At the moment, we don't have any questions, but as a reminder, everyone, please dial 01 to ask your question.
Okay, can we get the next online question then? Donna from Calgary. I am 65 and still working. Is my pension amount going to be cut when I decide to retire? Also, are the pensioners collecting now going to have their pension amounts cut? Larry?
Okay. Again, the message is the same. Even if you're drawing a pension, if the plan cannot make up losses by increasing contributions for a period of time, then benefits will have to be reduced. You ask that you're presently 65, you're still working. Is your pension going to be cut? I don't know if you have 35 years in the pension plan yet. If you don't, and you're earning pension beyond December 31st, 2015, your benefit will be subject to a lot more reduction if you retire prior to while you're 65, so that effect won't happen to you. Sorry, I missed that one.
Can we get the next question, please? Okay, we've got Barry from Edmonton who says, a person who retires with 35 years of service prior to 2016, and if this proposed pension legislation is approved, will individuals who are retired now be affected with the 50% cost of living, or will they retain the 60% that is now in effect? Larry, can you?
Yep. Under the proposal or the vision, you would retain the 60% cost of living, subject to hitting the contribution cap. And again, it will affect not only the amount of pension you're receiving, but any cost of living adjustments that you would have received.
Jim from Fort Vermilion, says, what kind of response are the MLAs saying about this reform, other than the generic response through the emails being sent back to members? Guy, can you?
Yeah, well, obviously, each party is establishing their position in this, and certainly the government MLAs are sending stock responses back, and that's why we want members to meet face-to-face with their MLAs, because when we're sending these letters to them and they're getting the stock response back, I think a lot of what's said in those responses needs to be challenged, and the best way of doing that is face-to-face and actually challenging their MLA on some of the conclusions they're coming to. So that's why meeting with your MLA is so important. And I want to be clear, and I missed this in the first bit, that these these proposed changes will be initiated through a legislation introduced in the spring session, which usually starts February, March next year. So that's our window of opportunity to directly meet with MLAs to convince them not to go ahead with these proposals. So when you go meet with your MLA and you've got a stock response from them that you want to challenge them, we will be able to provide you with some information and some hard-hitting questions that you can go back to them with.
Thanks. Our next question asks if doing this during bargaining for the Government of Alberta employees, is this not considered to be bad faith on the government's part? And if so, what, if anything, can be done about it?
Well, you have to realize that, yes, the government services under the PSPP, members under the PSPP, are in negotiations right now, and that set of negotiations is being sent to arbitration. The arbitration dates are set for February. And that we did put a proposal on the table regarding pensions. Anyone that's being kept up to speed with negotiations would know that we've asked the government to cover the unfunded liability portion and also a number of other changes to the pension plan to the benefit of our members. The fact that they are doing these proposed changes while we're in that process of bargaining, in our mind, may constitute bad faith bargaining. We're looking at our options of filing a complaint with the Labour Board. Having said that, though, there's also tens or hundreds of thousands of other workers in AUPE and outside of AUPE who are also being affected by these changes, and they're not in bargaining either. So I don't think these proposed changes have direct link with bargaining, but for those in the government services, there's no doubt that it's another indication, I think, of how the employer is treating its own employees, and certainly is another example of why our members need to get more engaged politically to force the government to withdraw these proposals.
Ken from Edmonton says, some comparisons have been made between our pension fund investments and those of, say, Saskatchewan. If there are issues regarding fund performance, that is investment returns, of our pension, which appears to partially be responsible for impacting the changes we see today, what is being done to rectify fund performance issues? Larry, could you speak to that?
Okay. One of the risk of comparing fund performance is timing of when you do that comparison. I have not looked at the Saskatchewan performance. Their plan actually is had converted to a defined contribution for the most part, but considerable amount of time before. But our investment performance part of our problem, I'd have to say yes. We had some very bad years. 2008, we took a substantial hit under both pension plans due to the collapse in the market. So they are part of the responsibility we see today. It's important to keep in mind that growth in the assets are generally allocated 80% to investment performance and 20% to contributions. What is being done to rectify fund performance issues? Both plans have done asset liability modeling studies. They're doing a matchup between the risks the plans face and the obligations the plan have, and trying to minimize our exposure to the equity market that hurt so bad in 2001 and 2008. And this is an ongoing management issue.
Another member wants to know, would AUPE be able to have someone do a pension calculator so that members can look and see what their options would be and what their benefits would be? I can take a first crack at that. We're looking at doing so. There are several problems with it. The first problem is that we don't know exactly what the government is going to implement. All we have is some proposals that they may or may not put into effect. The second problem, and this is a big one, is that, as you've heard earlier from Larry, one of the biggest changes that may happen to the plan doesn't involve a change directly to the benefit, it involves a change to the risks. In other words, by putting the hard cap on contributions, the government is essentially turning these plans from defined benefit plans into something that is very much like a target benefit plan, where the benefit you receive will depend on the plan's finances at the time. That's a huge transfer of risk from employers and the government to our members, and the pension calculator will not show that risk transfer. But we are nonetheless looking and seeing if it is feasible to have a calculator that will do some level of benefit calculations incorporating the government's proposals. Larry, did you have anything more you wanted to, or
Nope,
Guy?
that summarizes it.
Do we have anyone online on the phone lines waiting yet with a question?
We do not have anyone on the line.
Sorry? No? Okay.
There are currently no questions in the queue.
Okay. Next question. When will we find out if we can stop this pension cut to our lap pension? Joan asks. Guy, I'll throw that one to you.
Joan will know that when we've stopped this, when we know that the proposed legislation that's scheduled for the spring sitting is not introduced. That's why our window of opportunity now to put political pressure on your local MLA and on the government to reverse its decision to go forward with these proposals is so important. And it's only, in my mind, it's only by that political engagement of our members across the province that will force the government off these proposed changes. Obviously, as I said, we're doing other things like making our counter-proposal or our response to the finance minister. We're looking at legal challenges. But quite honestly, the only thing that's going to make a difference is by our members actively engaging politically and going to let their MLAs know that if they support these changes, that they will pay for it in the next provincial election. And we'll know when we've won this this battle, when they decide to not go forward with it. So I really encourage everyone out there to get that political engagement happening in your community. Utilize our resources and our expertise to help you do that, because that's what will stop these proposed changes.
Karen in Edmonton asks, I get mixed messages. One is that the pension fund as it stands is not sustainable. Another is that it is in fact sustainable. What is the correct answer? Well, what we're talking about here, I think, is a battle of spin to a certain extent. Clearly, by raising this as a review of the plan's sustainability, the government is at least posing the possibility that it's not sustainable as it currently stands. When we, on the union side, have challenged them on this and said there is no crisis facing the plan, they have responded, well, we never said there was a crisis. We just said we want to review sustainability. So there's a certain amount of dare I say, weasel words being used here. The position of the unions on both the Public Service Pension Plan and the Local Authorities Pension Plan is this, that the plans face challenges. Those challenges are the result of poor investment returns, low interest rates, that there is a plan in place to pay off those unfunded liabilities. As those are paid off, the cost of the plan will drop, the cost of contributions will drop, and the plan will become healthy, sustainable, and affordable. Larry or Guy, do you want to add anything to that?
No, the plans as they stand are sustainable. If you look at the LAP website, even the Minister of Finance comment that the plan is not in jeopardy. He used the words that he wants to mitigate future risk, but at present there is the question of sustainability simply isn't there.
And if I could add to that is, he's talking about, avoiding future crises or future problems. Well, I think by putting these proposals forward, he's actually creating a crisis in the pension plans because it's made it unstable. It's obviously made a lot of people nervous and concerned about it. And when you have the people paying into the pension plan getting concerned about their own plan, that's what creates a crisis. I think the main message we need to send our members is that the pension plans are strong, they're sustainable, the unfunded liability will be paid off over time as it is scheduled to do. And I think by putting these proposals in place and creating all this angst about pensions, the Minister of Finance is actually building a crisis instead of avoiding one.
Bob from Lethbridge asks, are MLA pensions going to be subject to pension reforms also? If not, can we attack on this front? Guy.
Well, I'll let Larry, because as far as I understand, MLAs do not have a pension plan. They may have all sorts of other golden parachutes which shroud them when they leave as MLAs, but from what I understand, they do not have what we would call a pension plan. Is that correct, Larry?
Yes, they have a form of a savings plan, if you will, and it works on two different levels. One is, and I'm quoting from memory, the government sets 13% of their compensation. On average, I believe their compensation is $134,000 a year. So 13% goes into a savings plan. And if the MLA puts in 3.65%, the government throws in an additional 3.65%. So it's in excess of 20% per year of $134,000.
Tammy from Calgary asks, is there any way to shift the balance of governance of the plan from the finance minister back into the hands of the investors?
That's a great question. Larry, do you want to take that? Because this is something we've been trying to work on. It's especially with the PSPP for many years with a number of different finance ministers sort of taking more control of the levers as the major stakeholder in PSPP. We've been working on that diligently, and both Tom and Larry were part of that process, and it's been very frustrating because we believe that governance of the plan should be the thing that happens first. Give us control over our plan so that we can best protect it for our members. Now, that's a very broad political statement, and I'll let these guys talk about the details, but governance is a huge issue, but it has to happen in lieu of and before any changes take place.
One of the, thank you, Guy. One of the key things that's missing in our current governance structure is members pay 50% of the cost of these plans. You take the hit just like your employer did in 2001, 2008. 50% of every increase came off your pay. But do you have an equal say at the table? And the answer to that is no. The Minister of Finance has shown how much authority he still retains. When the Public Service Board and the LAP Board would not recommend plan cuts in March of this year as requested by the Minister, he immediately took ownership of the issue And part of the legislation he's bringing forward in the spring of 2014 is what he calls enabling legislation, and it will strip the boards of their authority to make any recommendations on plan design. This gives the minister unfettered ability to change the plan without obtaining that recommendation from the boards. So the current governance structure is severely lacking as far as an equal seat at the table.
Yeah, I think that in fact it is poor governance that is very largely responsible for the problems that face the plan today. And it would be difficult to exaggerate the extent to which the current governance structure of both the local authorities plan and the public service plan is a complete and utter mess. It is riddled with a lack of accountability from service providers, including the investment people and the administrative services people. It is riddled with conflict of interest. So you all know, I imagine, that by statute, the Minister of Finance is the sole trustee of the plan. As a trustee, he has a fiduciary obligation to put the interests of the plan first and foremost in all his decision-making. And yet, over and over again, he says, well, I have to balance that with the interests of taxpayers. Well, that's a problem for a politician, all right, but as a trustee, you have no business doing that. In fact, that kind of conflict of interest is prevalent throughout the governance structure of these plans, and it's a serious part of the reason for their underperformance. Anka from Edmonton says, with the declining numbers of AUPE members due to position abolishments, how will the current and future members be able to keep supporting the growing number of retirees? Is there perhaps an argument for a contribution cap to prevent a limit to this burden? I'm going to pass that to Larry, but first I just want to make an observation. And you're quite right to point out that, in fact, it's government policy that is responsible for some of the problems facing the public service pension plan. That is, the statements from the minister and from finance talk about the growing number of retirees and the dwindling number of active participants paying contributions. A large part of the reason for that is that for the last 20 years, the government of Alberta has been downsizing, laying people off, contracting out jobs, and that has created what they call the maturation of the plan, that is the growing number of retirees and the declining number of contributors. Larry, could you
Sure.
talk about the
change, if you will?
change? Yeah.
I'll give you a comparison. When you open up an RRSP in your 20s or 30s, you can take on more risk because you've got 30, 35 years ahead of you before you start drawing out as income. Pension plans pretty much the same way. Our expenses, our risk are based on the average in the plan, the average age, the average period of service. So we measure that investment window based on the average age of the plan. When you start moving away from a plan that has more contributors to a plan where more people are drawing a pension, it changes the risk to the plan, obviously. So as a plan is managed on a proper basis, you start moving your investments away from more risk to lesser risk type of investments. You're now looking more for a cash flow and a constant revenue source, if you will. And it is managed. We're not the only plan aging in Canada. Some of the big plans in the East are actually well into the mature stage where the majority of their members are actually pensioners, and they're being quite successful.
And if I can comment on that too, the fact is that we need to attract new workers into the public service. The population growth in Alberta is skyrocketing, meaning that the demand on services is increasing, and the need for more frontline staff is always there. And as our aging workforce retires, there should be new staff coming on. And one of the things that new workers are going to look at in building their career is what kind of pension plan, does the employer have in place. And I think these changes are going to turn away a lot of young, eager, dedicated workers to look elsewhere. And that, to me, is more the strain, if you like, on the pension plan is that to remain vital and viable as a pension plan, you need to have new blood coming into it. And these changes aren't going to encourage people to join the public service. And as we all know, those of us who work the front lines, workloads are increasing, the stress and the strain is increasing, and obviously age is increasing as well. So it really is incumbent upon the government as an employer to attract new staff. And one of the ways to do that is to make sure that people know they're entering a good, strong pension plan. So again, the proposed changes create the crisis of not encouraging new, young, dedicated workers to join in the public service. And that's not just going to hurt the pension plan, that's going to hurt Albertans as well, because Albertans need those services that our members provide.
Lois in Coal Lake writes in to say, I called the local authority's pension plan, and they told me that they couldn't decrease benefits, that it would actually be illegal. Is that correct? Very interesting question. As it stands right now, that's correct. They cannot reduce your benefits. That's why these changes are being proposed. The government can, in fact, legislate just about anything it wants, including a change to pension benefits. Guy, do you want to talk about the political side of that?
In what context, Tom?
Well, just the ability of the government to give themselves the power to do just about anything they want.
Well, I mean, let's face it, the Conservative government have a huge majority in the House, and we've seen them legislate things before that were very unpopular and damaging, but because they've got the numbers in the House, they feel they can do that. So, you know, is it legal? Well, the government can write its own laws and can make whatever, you know, it wants legal. So, you know, the other thing they've put in the proposed legislation we haven't touched on in terms of legalities is the fact that there will be no benefit improvements for a period of, well, until 2021, which is, what, 8 years away. So, I mean, they can put into legislation anything they want that are going to affect the benefits of these plans. With that much a majority in the House, Tom, yes, they can do anything they want pretty much. And I think that's why it's so incumbent upon us politically to try and stop anything that's going to damage these pension plans for our members.
Could I ask the operator if we have anyone on the line right now with a phone question?
We have Lisa Harrell.
Go ahead.
Hi there. I just wanted to ask if this is a secure plan and you're making it kind of come out. I belong with AUPE Pension, that the people should have a say in a pension that they've paid into half of their career. And they were never given an AUPE because we trusted that these people sitting on the board would be taking care of our best interests. And how can the government just step in like that?
Do you want me to get that?
Larry?
Okay. Under the current structure of the public service and the local authorities pension plan, we're a creation of legislation which the minister owns as the Minister of Finance. Under a joint trusteeship is what we've been proposing and pushing forward. We would step away from the legislation and actually be under what's called the Employment Pension Plans Act. And the plan, because it would be jointly trusteed, the minister would not be able to go in and change our plan. He could change the Employment Pension Plans Act, which applies to all the pension plans in Alberta, but he wouldn't be able to start tinkering with our specific pension plans. Until that's done, he has the legislative authority.
Yeah, I think our members, and Lisa, you need to recognize that under current legislation, how powerful the Minister of Finance is, being the sole shareholder of the pension plans and the ability as a government minister to introduce legislation. And you sort of say, well, why are they doing this? Well, I think we outlined the fact that you know, it's not on the basis of the plans are in crisis. The Minister of Finance himself admitted they're not in crisis. It's being done for political reasons. I think this has got everything to do with the 2016 election, when the government's up for re-election, and the image of the public sector pensions out there. He's going to go in front of the taxpayers and say, see, I dealt with those pension plans, and you know, I protected the taxpayers and all that stuff. And I think it's being done for those reasons, political reasons, not for any other reason. So I think that's why the government feels it can do that or should do that. And why they do that? Well, they are the government, Lisa, and unfortunately, they feel they have the power, the authority to do that. Maybe they have the legal authority. I don't know if they have the moral authority.
Yeah, and I think it's important to bear in mind, Lisa, that this didn't come out of the blue. This is coming at the end of a prolonged period of several years where defined benefit pension plans, and specifically public sector defined benefit pension plans have come under attack from right-wing politicians, from the business press, from the financial services industry, from the Fraser Institute, from the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. And they try to portray these plans as some kind of perk. These plans are your life savings. You have saved in a compulsory savings plan for your entire career, and now these people want to come in and change the terms of that savings plan. Are there any other calls waiting online?
There are no further questions.
Okay, let's go back to the computer board. Karen in Edmonton says, many members are ready to retire if these changes go through, even though they would not have retired at this time. Would a sudden mass exodus of members pose a risk to the future of the pension fund? I'll take the easy part of that and say yes. Larry, would you care to explain further?
When we set contribution rates and investment policy for both plans, we take into account a number of factors. One is how many people will retire. And we base that assumption on what our experiences over the past decades, if you will. So if we have a sudden upswing in retirements, it changes a lot. It's not the fact that only people are retiring, it's our investment strategy, our assumptions for future contributions and earnings growth have to be altered. And it will definitely have an impact on the plan, but the plan is designed to be, in our assumptions, to be conservative and to be able to build in buffers that can take some of these hits without hurting other members. But it definitely would age the plan and affect the mix of our investments on a go-forward basis.
Willa from Edmonton says, at the TBF, Treasury Board and Finance, ASM last Friday, the employer did admit that there were 3 levers that affect the pension fund. 1, investment returns, 2, contributions, and 3, benefit reductions. Still, a lot of members don't believe it. What can I do to get through to my colleagues? I'll ask those of you who've been on the road at the town hall meetings to address that.
Well, you know, we tried to get out as much information to as many members as possible on how these proposed changes are going to affect, you know, our members in many different ways. So it's really important that that information is shared in the worksite. We've developed pension toolkits, which includes literature, buttons, and other forms of communication with our members. Those are being churned out of the AUPE headquarters at an alarming rate. In fact, we can't keep up with demand, and I suggest that you contact AUPE to get a kit for your own worksite. Obviously, directing people to our website is an important source of information as well. So anything you can do to not only you know, have your colleagues informed, but get them mad too, because this is something that's you know, that affects them. It affects their life savings, as Tom was saying. So it's something they should be very concerned about. You know, whatever you can do, I really appreciate the fact that you're trying to educate your colleagues on the worksite, because we all know there's some people that want to deny there's any issues out there, but I think education is key. Education is power. Knowledge is power. So anything you can do with the resources we've got to help you get the word across to your colleagues is grateful. Thanks.
May I add to that?
Sure.
When you look at the 3 levers, there's 2. There's contributions and benefits. Investment performance is a product. It's the end result of investment selection, asset mix, or whatever. When you set your asset mix, you have to calculate how much risk you're taking on. And as I mentioned before, the more mature a plan becomes, the less risk you want to assume within that investment framework. You're not likely to want to take a high risk and anticipate a higher returns, because there's just too much fluctuation in the market. So I'd be very hesitant to call investment returns or performance as a lever. It's a risk measurement.
Derek writes in to say, what is the union's position? How will you keep it sustainable? In other words, what kind of proposals do we have to make the plan sustainable? Larry?
Okay. Well, the first thing is fix the governance. These pension plans are managed by a cornucopia of parties. In the case of the public service and the local authorities pension boards, they do not play an oversight role over the two entities that support the plan, Alberta Pension Services or Alberta Investment Management. They're arm's length from them. The Minister of Finance, as Guy mentioned earlier, is the sole shareholder of Alberta Pension Services, and the legislation that created Alberta Investment Management Corporation is actually legislation, again, under the Minister of Finance. So both corporations are not accountable to the boards. The next level is these plans are 50 or 60 years old. They need to be managed on an active basis. They're living entities, if you will. At this point in time, there's no clear ownership of plan design. The Minister of Finance shared it with the boards up until the point that they wouldn't take benefits out of the plans, and then he just reacted and stripped the boards of that authority. So clearly, there's a lot of overlap and confusion as to how these plans are managed.
And I think it's important to remember that the plans are sustainable.
Yes.
And well managed. And we've all seen an increase in our contribution rates over the last few years. And obviously our members don't want to pay more, and I understand that. But the boards put that in place to offset the unfunded liability, which I think, Larry, is at 2018. Some of those, the part of that unfunded liabilities paid off, and contribution rates, there's less pressure on contribution rates at that point. So they are sustainable already. But I do think when we do meet with the finance minister to respond to the proposals, we will be putting in place some other suggestions which will help support the plan even further. I don't know if we can go into those, Tom, but I mean, we have talked about it at the town halls about the commuted pensionable service and those going into the MEPP. Maybe you want to touch on that, because this is one of those sort of rubbing points for us that affects the PSPP, but maybe you can just go into detail, because this is something we have raised before.
One of the irritants that has come up over and over again when we discuss the public service pension plan, in particular with the government, is something called combined pensionable service. When a member of the General Services Bargaining Unit is promoted into management, they move from the public service pension plan to the management employees pension plan, which is a much richer plan. When you hear the media or the politicians talking about gold-plated pension plans or Cadillac pension plans, they don't mean your pension plan. Your pension plan is more of a used Volkswagen. The Cadillac pension plan is the management employees pension plan, which is not being cut. Thank you very much. When members move to management, if they move to management, and enter the MEPP, they benefit from what is called combined pensionable service. They're allowed to count their years of service in the public service pension plan towards their management employee pension plan 2% pension. The problem is that and it's not immediately apparent, but when you pick apart how combined pensionable service works, it turns out that the public service pension plan is in fact subsidizing the 2% pension plan of management employees. We feel that that's offensive, we think it's wrong, and we've had a hard time determining the actual financial impact. We have asked the government to address it, and so far have not received a favorable response. Wayne in Calgary says, I have the 85 factor and will only be 61 in 2015. I understand what pension benefits I earned to then will be what the pension estimator gives me. Is there any advantage to continue working past 2015? My read of it is that all time that I would earn after 2015 would be hit with a 4 to 6% hit. Am I correct in this? Larry, do you want to?
Sure. You're correct. I mean, if you have 85 factor, you have an unreduced pension at that point in time, but you don't have a full pension, I'm assuming by your question. So you continue to earn pensions up until time you hit 65. The early retirement reduction will only hit those benefits if you retire prior to 65. So you would work 4 more years, and the changes to the early retirement provisions will have no effect on you. The contribution cap will be always hanging over you.
Tom in St. Albert says, should Alberta not vote PC as a result of this pension issue? What is the Wild Rose position on these changes? Guy?
Well, many of our members live in Wild Rose ridings and have written to their MLA and have met with their MLAs and gotten a response from the Wild Rose that the Wild Rose does not believe that these proposed changes are necessary. They also understand that a promise is a promise, that when you enter the pension plan, there's certain promise in terms of what you will receive when you retire, and the Wild Rose believe that the government is, again, breaking that promise, so that they believe, the Wild Rose believe that, you know, the promise made is a promise, or should be a promise kept. They do recognize that if in the future there needs to be changes to the plan for whatever reason, whether its viability is at risk or whether there's changes that need to be made, that it should be done with the full consultation, respectful consultation with stakeholders, which obviously includes AUPE and other unions. So their position on this is the proposals are not necessary, that if they form government, that they would be working with stakeholders in the future. So, you know, that's the response they've been given to our members, and like any response that we're getting, we would hold them to it if, in fact, they did form the government in the next election.
Joe from Edmonton says, wait, you just scrolled away. Okay, Matthew in Medicine Hat says, the minister said the plans owe billions of dollars. Don't we have to do something about that? Will a pension be there when we need it? I'm only 38. Larry.
The total unfunded liability, the portion that was that you're making all those extra contributions for, between the two plans is about $7.2 billion. That's a lot of money by any measure. But the government likes to hang that out as it's only theirs. Under both plans, 50% of that liability is carried by members, your contributions. So they're being a little high-ended as far as what their risk is. So is it being managed? Well, the contribution rates that we have today reflect those losses, and under the legislation that the plans are governed by, any kind of loss that's incurred has a 15-year period where the contributions have to make that shortfall up. It's kind of amortized over a 15-year window. And as Guy mentioned earlier, in 2017, 2018, those increases start falling off. It may not result in a decrease, but it takes the pressure off further increases. Market performance has been improving. The plan funded status has also been improving since 2008. So your question is, you're 38 years old, will the plan be there when you retire? Again, I go back to, if I'm looking at the Canada Pension Plan, people used to ask, will that be here? Will it be around when I retire? And yes, both will be. If they're managed properly, and if we keep our feet to the floor, if you will, the plans are very sustainable.
Joe from Edmonton says, what is the reasoning behind capping the contributions? That's a very, very interesting question, which leads to several more interesting questions. The simple answer is that the government and employers don't want to spend any more on the pension plans, and that's understandable. But it also shows that they view the plans quite differently than the unions do. The unions recognize that high contribution rates are a hardship. It's hard for our members to make those contributions. But we believe that for a limited period of time, it is worth it in order to preserve the plans as sound, defined benefit pension plans. In other words, we think some short-term pain in return for the long-term gain of guaranteed benefits is worth it. What's interesting is the government is calling this whole process a sustainability review, but the effect of capping contributions is to make the plans less sustainable, in fact, to seriously call their sustainability into question. Two reasons. Firstly, by attacking benefits, transferring risk, and imposing a contribution cap, the government is creating a situation where some people will choose to leave the plan. If that is the case, if that happens on any scale, that will make the plans more mature. The very problem the government has identified of more retirees and fewer people contributing will in fact be made worse by the effect of putting the cap on. Secondly, by capping contributions and having a hard cap, the government takes away the plan's ability to respond to negative changes. if there is a short-term loss in the stock market, for example, if you're at the cap and you've got a hard cap, you can't respond to it by raising contributions, even very temporarily. All you can do is cut benefits. To that extent, at least, I would argue that the proposal to impose a hard cap on contributions fundamentally changes the nature of the plan, puts the plan at risk, and makes the plan less sustainable. Larry or Guy, did you want to add anything to that little tirade?
Nope, I think that covers it.
That was a good tirade, Tom. Thank you.
Laurie in Calgary says, when is AUP meeting with the Minister of Finance?
Before the end of the year. We're actually developing our response to his proposals, and then it's just a matter of arranging a meeting with him. You know, as much as he wants input from stakeholders, of which AUP is a major stakeholder in both plans, and as much as he's willing to listen, I'm really concerned about whether we can convince him, or I can convince him through just common sense and good governance, and maybe on even moral grounds, convince him to change his mind. I've seen the way this government's operated the last little while, and I'm not convinced that you know, good arguments and common sense is going to change their minds. I think political pressure will change their minds. But having said that, we will be developing a very comprehensive response to his proposals, which we will be sharing with the members on our website and through other means to let you know exactly what we're discussing with him. And as Tom said, I mean, there are a number of proposals, counter proposals that we can put forward that help the plan, such as the commuted pension that he referred to before. So yeah, there's things that we can change, but when it comes to these proposals, our main position, I think, would be they're totally unacceptable and we're not in support of them. So whether that's going to convince him to not put them in, I don't know. But I think what we've been underlining, what I've been underlining the last 2 weeks, we've been on the road in every community in the province, is go meet with your MLA and convince them that if they force these proposals through, they're going to lose their job as their MLA. That's what's going to make the difference.
Can I ask the operator if there are any more questioners on hold on the phone lines?
There are currently no questions in the queue.
Okay. Sylvia in Edmonton says, what is the NDP's stand on the government's proposed changes to our pensions? Have we had discussions with them?
Yeah, I've met with all the opposition parties, and obviously the NDP are fully in support of maintaining strong public service pension plans and supporting AUP in all of its efforts to to try and prevent these proposals from going through. So the NDP has obviously been a very strong supporter of AUP and in many of our issues and campaigns, and very much on side on this one. So again, I'm very encouraged that all three opposition parties, to varying degrees, have been supportive of our efforts to try and prevent these changes from going through. And this is something that our members need to know as they get more politically aware and engaged, that more political activity out there, especially around what the opposition parties is doing, will pay off in the long run.
Raheem in Lethbridge says, my pension deduction keeps increasing every year. Is it a good idea to opt out of the PSPP and invest in an RRSP myself? I think there's a couple of answers to that. One of them Larry's already given you, which is moving to an RRSP has its own risk, very, very substantial risks, and it also has substantial costs. A second answer is that, in fact, you can't do so. If you are in the public service pension plan and are an employee of the government, the only way to leave the plan is to leave your job. John in Carvel says, how much money will the proposed changes take out of the Alberta economy in the long run? Lower monthly pensions will mean less money for us to spend.
Yeah, that's a great point. And John, you hit the nail on the head, is that, and we've been, obviously having discussions, not just with our members, but also with local communities, especially small communities that rely upon, the people in that community spending their money, buying goods and services, and keeping local businesses alive. And when you take money out of pensioners' pockets, extra money that they can't spend on the goods and services in the community to support local business, that's going to have a huge impact on especially smaller communities. But what we're also identifying is that when you don't allow pensioners to be able to support themselves, because you've cut their pension benefits, then they have to rely on other social networks, which cost the Alberta economy as well. If they need to rely upon other government sources of funding or government agencies, which are funded by taxpayers, that's going to have a detrimental impact on communities as well. So you're absolutely right that when you put money in the pockets of people in small communities, that resonates and generates revenue and economic wealth throughout a community. So these changes to the pensions will obviously have impact on local economies for sure.
Could I see the next question, please? Natalie in Edmonton says, you spoke just now about no reduction in the management employees pension plan, but are they not abolishing the MEP and and moving all public service employees into the PSPP, LAPP plan? The short answer is not quite no. What they're doing is they are closing the management employees pension plan to new entrants. So new hires into management will not go into the existing MEP, they will go into the PSPP. Current managers and current excluded people in the MEP will continue in the MEP. They will continue to have a plan that has a 2% benefit across the board, 3 years highest average earnings, a plan that costs right now about 34%, I believe, of total payroll, whereas contributions for the PSP, the ones that are problematic and the ones that are the reason why the government is putting a cap on contributions, are currently at 26% of payroll. Not only that, the expenses for the cost of the MEP just went up again. The government passed an order in council just last month increasing contributions for the existing MEP at the same time that they are in fact talking about having to cut benefits for the PSPP. However, yes, in defense of their proposal, they are saying that future hires into management will in fact go into the PSPP. However, all existing participants in the MEP will continue to have the very expensive and very rich current pension. Jane in St. Albert says she would like to go en masse to tour MLA's offices. How do AUP members organize a group to attend their respective offices? Who do we contact for area-specific member information?
Great question, Jane. What we're doing is those people that did attend the face-to-face town halls left us their contact information, their phone number, if they were willing to meet with their MLA. Currently, our organizers at AUPE are contacting each constituency office to find out when the MLA would be available. And then we're calling those people in those constituencies to say, your MLA is available at such and such a date. You can phone then to make an appointment. If you weren't at the face-to-face and we don't have your contact information, if you can send an email to organize@aupe.org just with your contact information, we can then give you a call back, let you know when your MLA is available and who else in your constituency and in your community is willing to attend as well. Because we are asking people to attend as groups if they want to. Others are going as individuals. That's fine. I hear some MLAs are refusing to meet with groups. They'll only meet with individuals. But we'll do our best to support you so you can be part of that process. And if you want to go with a group of folks from your community, then we can organize that too. So just send us an email at that email address with your contact information, and we'll get you going from there. Thanks.
Karen asks, can you go over the situation once more for people who can retire before January 1st, 2016 with the 85 points and 55 plus years old? Will their pension be affected if they continue to work after January 2016? Aside from the future potential reduction if the fund is not doing well? Well, I'll hand part of this to Larry, but I'll take a first whack at it. Their pension benefits will not go down except for that risk if the worst case scenario happens in the future. They will continue to rack up pensionable service. They will continue to, if they receive pay increases, have higher average salary. But if they decide to, if the proposals go through, the 85 factor disappears and the normal age of retirement becomes age 65. So that's when it gets complicated. If these people who have the 85 factor already, if they work past January 1st, 2016, their entitlement continues to go up with increased service and increased salary. But if they'd retire before they reach the age of 65, what happens is their pension benefit is segmented. The part of the benefit they earned up to December 31st, 2015 is unchanged. You have the 85 factor. You will not pay any early retirement penalty on that part of the benefit. But for the benefit you earned after January 1st, 2016, if you're retiring before age 65, that will pay the early retirement penalty. And as you know, they're also talking about increasing the early retirement penalty. So you would continue to increase your pension benefit by working past that date, but not by as much as you would if the changes had not been pushed through. Larry, have I confused it enough, or should you?
I have nothing further to add to that.
Henry in Calgary says, is there a possibility of the employer freezing the defined benefit pension plan and then introducing a defined contribution plan for new employees? Larry, do you want to address that?
Yes. First, I'd like to explain what happens when you freeze a defined benefit pension plan. In the case of the management employees pension plan, I'll use that as an example. When you don't bring in new members to a pension plan, it ages very quickly. And the older the average age in the plan becomes, the more expensive benefits earned become. You have a shorter investment window. So freezing a pension plan, a defined benefit pension plan, is a very poor decision because you will pay substantially more. Can it stay on a go-forward basis? It's a defined contribution plan. As we mentioned earlier, the Minister of Finance controls the legislation. Until we have joint trusteeship, we run that risk.
Leanne in Edmonton asks, do you think the Minister of Finance would be willing to meet with all AUPE members in a town hall meeting or just with the union president?
That'd be a huge town hall meeting, wouldn't it? I'd love to see that. At the moment, representing AUPE, I would be presenting our response, our formal response to his proposals. But I will definitely ask him if he'd be willing to meet with any number of our members in the town hall, but which I think he might be reluctant to take me up on. That's why it's so important that people living in the Minister of Finance's riding approach him to meet with him face to face as constituents. We are looking at future actions, obviously, around this. We've hit the ground running and holding these 50 town halls across the province, and then this virtual town hall today, put together very quickly, but also very successfully. We will be looking at, beyond meeting with our MLAs, to holding other events, rallies perhaps, maybe larger town halls, maybe invite MLAs, maybe invite the opposition parties to come and address as many of our members as we can get, prior to the spring sitting of the legislature when the proposed legislation is coming through. So I think having a town hall meeting of a mass number of our members with the Minister of Finance would be a wonderful idea, and I will certainly put that to him. But I'm not confident he'll take us up on the offer. However, if you are one of his constituents, I think he has a responsibility to meet with you as a constituent who's concerned about these issues.
A member from Calgary asks, as a young member seeing these changes, why would I want to stay in the plan and pay into it when I will get less out of it from what I pay into? It seems all younger members may not even be able to collect from it. Well, hopefully younger members will be able to collect from it, but you've really put your finger on, I think, a fundamental issue here. The fact is the government has been trying to rationalize these proposed changes in part by talking about intergenerational equity and saying we're doing this so the young people won't have to bear these burdens. What this actually does is mean that younger members of the plans will continue to pay very high contribution rates to support and pay off unfunded liabilities for benefits that they will never enjoy themselves. This, in fact, makes intergenerational transfers even more serious. I think it's a really fair question, and it's something that as a young member, you should be contacting your MLA and making that point precisely, is saying, look, I took this job in part because of the pension plan. Now you are changing it, and it calls into question my desire to stay in the plan. Larry?
I'd like to add to that. One of the unique things about these changes, particularly the cap on contributions, is how it affects our members. Younger members are going to be paying into a plan for 30, 35 years and not know what the ultimate benefit's going to be because of the cap. In the case of our older members who have been in the plan for 35 years and paid for 35 years, they are now seeing that they don't know if they can depend on the plan as far as keeping their income as promised. The minister has achieved an equal risk.
Okay, I think we're drawing to an end here. Although I see there's one very quick question. Charity in Edmonton wants to know, where is the minister's riding? I have to confess that I don't know. Do you know?
Spruce Grove. I can't remember the name of the riding, but Spruce Grove is the major town in his riding.
So do we have any closing comments from Guy and Larry?
Well, I just like to thank, I don't know how many of you are out there. This is a very unique situation. I'm used to talking to crowds of people, but so I really want to thank you for engaging in this process, and stay informed, keep asking those questions, keep contacting us through our website, but more importantly, please, join the rest of your sisters and brothers who have signed on to actually meeting their MLA face-to-face to let them know how it affects you personally and your family and your community if these proposed changes go through. And please stay aware of any other actions or any other strategies we might be putting in place, because I believe we can stop these changes from going through. I don't think the minister has anticipated how much anger he's generated amongst not only AUP membership, but members of other unions as well. And I forgot to mention that when you look at all the plans that are being affected, that's about 300,000 Albertans. And when you combine that with their spouses, that's about 600,000 Albertans, and you combine that with the number of people who are already on pensions, that's 70,000 Albertans. That's a huge voting bloc. And I don't think the minister anticipated that he'd be creating this much anger around this issue. So it's really important for us to make sure we continue to push forward to ensure that not just the Minister of Finance, but all the government MLAs realize that there's political jeopardy in playing around with your pension.
Thank you very much for participating this evening. And let me say, just before we sign off, that if we did not get to your question this evening, don't forget to go to the AUP webpage. It may take a few days, but we will be posting a Q&A section on that website. Thanks very much.